feels like a good fish for my first one. I did feed a bit in the beginning. I put in 2 balls of ground bait, cupped in 2 balls, and then also cupped in some loose maggots and pellets, so 3 cupfuls of bait. And today I'm fishing at Pisces Country Park. It's close to the small village of Welney, which is right on the Norfolk Cambridgeshire border, in the heart of the fens. This is quite a good fish. My plan today was, the programme is about my pole secrets, stillwater pole secrets. And I was going to start to fish on the bottom by cupping in reasonable volumes of bait, and then later on in the programme fish up in the water, just changing the... Now this fish, I've just seen it flash, is a big rudd, and it was right on the bottom. Because I'd cupped that bait in, it's a lovely fish, because I'd cupped that bait in, everything had gone to the bottom, the fish are then over the bait. There. What a terrific fish to start the programme with. That's beautiful. Let's just have a look at that fish. It's well over ½ a pound and lovely, lovely. Better save my pole from going in the water. Perfect condition. Lovely bright red fins, greeny gold back, silvery gold underneath. Perfect specimen, and the top lip just slightly receding there. They look a bit like roach, but when you look at them, they're a little bit fatter, and the fins are more tinged red. What a great start, and there's so many fish out there. I'm going straight out again. I started with 2 maggots on the hook, and that I'd only just fed, buried straight away. That was lovely. So 2 red maggots, always good to start with 2 maggots. If I get bitted out with small fish, then I'll put a pellet or a piece of sweet corn on. Just see how it goes through the programme. But because I've cupped in a nice pot of maggots that have gone to the bottom, I've got a feeling that the fish have gone straight down onto those. I cupped the ground bait in first, and then the maggots settling in on top. It's a funny sort of a day, really. It's mid-August, but it's one of those days where the sun's been in and out and it's clouding over again. I'm not quite sure. We're probably going to get 1 or 2 showers, but it's a nice warm southerly, southwesterly wind, so it's always good for fishing. A nice westerly wind is always good. I've dropped that bait right on top of where I've fed. Already there's a little shower coming. I'm just watching. Look at that float just disappearing. I mean, again, that was just a tiny fish, I think. I'm hoping to avoid them small fish. Usually if you get on the bottom, if you get your bait to the bottom, then you catch big fish. The sun was out a few moments ago and now it's raining. Another bite, another fish straight away. It's not so big as the last one, but right on the feed. It's going to be one of those days when there's lots and lots of fish. Just a small roach, this one. Lovely, I can swing that one in. Lovely little roach, probably 2 ounces, but the fins on that are not quite so red as the rudd, and the fish is a bit slimmer. Well, that's a good start. Let's show you the ground bait mix that I put in. The ground bait mix is, one of them is probably about the most famous Van der Nine ground bait ever. It's called Super Cup. And it was one of the first ones that were imported into this country. Mainly a biscuit base, but it's got some lovely sweet additives to it that are really attractive for, well, it's really good for all these fish, roach, rudd and bream in particular. That's mainly, I think, what we're fishing for today. That big rudd early on was a good example. I'm going to put a kilo of that in. I'm using ground bait because there's lots of fish in here. and I want to try and get some bait right on hard on the bottom. That's where I'm starting to fish, so I want to get some bait hard on the bottom. The other mix is Super Lake, and there's about half a kilo there, so 1 kilo of Super Cup and half a kilo of Super Lake. Once again, another bream, another good sweet mix, just slightly darker. Mix the 2 dry contents together. Tuck them bags under there. Oh, the sun's come out again now. Mix them really well, and then when you add your water, just add it sort of a little bit at a time, and as you're adding it, really agitate the ground bait with your hand. I usually pour with the right hand, and I want this to be not too, there's lots of small fish in here, so I want to make sure the ground bait is on the wet side rather than the dry side. I don't want too many dry pieces coming off it to attract the smaller fish. So the more drier a ground bait is, then it will be sort of more active, lots of bits and pieces coming off it, and sometimes you don't always want that with big fish. So if anything, just wet it a little bit more. It'll always dry out because there's so much biscuit in this ground bait. It will always dry out a bit. I've probably put 2.5 pints of water in there, at least 2 pints anyway. I never really measure it, I just put it in, but that's about right, I think. It's a nice, just so I can squeeze it and it'll hold together, but I know it'll still touch more, still go to the bottom. Now I always use a ground bait riddle, a diamond mesh, nice big riddle over a bucket. It takes seconds to do it, but it makes so much difference to your ground bait, because it takes all those big lumps. Probably takes 10 or 20 seconds, not even that. See those really big lumps and just rub them through like that. They're the wetter parts. The wetter parts go through. The first bits that go through are the drier bits. Then mix them all together like that. And then just test it. You can finish up. Yeah, that's nice. It's really gripping together nicely. I know that not much will come off that. That will go straight to the bottom, boom, and the fish will go straight on top of it. Right, now I've mixed that, I'll show you exactly how I fed at the beginning. I'll repeat that and then you'll see how quick it works. Pole cup is so important for feeding. You can put your bait exactly in the right position. Now into that, we've got ground bait there, let's put a few maggots in there, a handful of maggots in the top, and a few pellets, a few of these. There's some 4 mils, and here I've got some 2 mil feed pellets. They're lovely. They will just sit in, all they are is, it's like a compressed ground bait, but made from fish meal. So they'll just sit there. If you loose feed these, a lot of them get taken on the way down. I will loose feed a few just to draw fish in, but so we've got the ground bait. We can make that into a nice ball. A nice hard ball. See, it's got some maggots in there, full of pellets, loads of feed. That will drop straight to the bottom. Now I've picked a marker on the far bank, so that I know that I'm fishing in the same place, in the same direction every time. There's a big willow tree across and a tree trunk, and I'm just dropping that level with that tree trunk. One ball. That's going straight to the bottom. Another one the same. Perhaps a few more maggots in there as well. This ground bait will break up. It's not that wet that it's not active. It will break up as it. Hopefully with those pellets in the ground bait and the maggots, the fish will come round and sort of graze over the top of the bait. Nice, it's quite a big heavy ball right in the same place. Bump. And there was an extra, I think there's a lot of fish in here, so there's an extra. I'm going to cup in some loose bait. Some maggots. Here. Quite a few. Sort of half a pot, and this pot is 250 millilitres, so a few of the 2mm pellets and a few of the 4. That's just to draw some fish in. We put the ground bait down. I'm just going to put some loose over the top to draw the fish in, and then they sort of come in and then go down onto the feed. A lot of this bait will probably get intercepted by fish as well, but they should. If you want to fish on the bottom, you want to fish really biggish volumes, not so often, but biggish volumes of bait, not so often. So that's what we're trying to do. Nice cupful of that loose feed. And that's exactly over the top. That sprinkling in there, you imagine how attractive that is to fish. Now usually once you've fed like that, the fish are a little bit, they go a little bit scatty. They're whizzing about all over the place. So it usually takes one or two of them maggots are floating. Just see them on the top. But the fish will be whizzing round a bit at first. So sometimes when you start, you get 1 or 2 silly bites. My hands are covered in ground bait. Give them a wipe in a minute. 2 maggots. Just get that started. And I'll go right on top of that feed. I've got what I would call a bulk rig. I've got all the shot down to try and get my bait through them surface fish. I'm dropping it to try but 1 or 2 of them will intercept it, no doubt. Which they have done there. It looks like my float didn't settle then. It didn't. Just went. It attracted 1 or 2 little fish in at first, which I said it would. You just have to try and get through those. That's so small, that one. A little tiny roach. I won't put him in the keep now. I'll put him straight back because it's only about an ounce. But where I've cupped in, first of all, there's a few fish there racing round. I want to get to the bottom though, where the big fish are. That's what I'm looking to do. As I'm shipping out, keep the rig low in the water as you ship out. You won't tangle then. As long as you keep it in the water, it can't tangle. And then I'm going to try and drop it straight down, just above where I've fed. Try and drop it to get through. I think it's got through those early fish now. The bulk has taken up. You'll see the little dropper take up in a minute. And there's the last shot just taking up now. Oh, float shot under. Don't know what that was. Shouldn't really be. I wouldn't really expect to catch any big fish yet. I would expect probably later on to perhaps catch some tench or big bream. There's another fish on the drop, slightly bigger fish this time, straight away. But just because you're fishing exactly over where your feed is, you're going to catch more fish. It's a lovely roach. Might just be able to just swing it. It really is a big fish though to swing. Probably 5 or 6 ounces. There. If you look at that fish compared to the first rudd that I caught, you see how the fins are not quite so red tinged. They are reddish but not quite so bright, and the fish is slimmer and more silvery in colour. That's just taken the hook down inside it. That was a big fish on the drop. When you're fishing with a pole, it's so... everything is so accurate. You drop your bait exactly where you're fed. If any fish are feeding in that area, then you catch them. You know, it's just so perfect for fishing. Feeding precisely with a pole cup is the best way when you're fishing down on the bottom. And then having a bulk rig to go through to go through those surface fish if you can and get that bait down to the bottom. And we can select bigger baits as well to fish with. It's quite breezy today. It's not a perfect summer's day really. Dropping that in again. Just after feeding, it's always a little bit, as I say, that the fish are a little bit panicky because there's just so many of them. They'll just, in a few moments, it'll die down, and there's little fish, there's everything here at the moment. There's another little tiny roach, but catching so quick. Another one of those small 1 ounce roach. I won't put in the net. It was so small, didn't even damage those 2 big red maggots on the hook. Remember to keep that rig in the water as you ship out. If you keep your pole low to the water, so that your rig will stay in the water, then just as you get to where when you get to where you're fishing, lift it out and drop it. As I say, at the moment it's as if I've just loose fed because I've put that big cup of loose feed in. So there's lots of fish there, and I'm waiting for that for the bigger fish to move in on that settled bait. Probably start to see the swim bubbling a bit as well. That happens. You imagine we've fed, there's bites all the time. We've fed in that really tight area. So much bait. Another one of those small roach. And these are always the first ones to start to feed. The big ones, big fish are always a little bit more wary and take longer to come to the bait. It's always the same. They just... And what I'm going to do, I'm going to have another go with double maggot. If it gets... my bait hasn't got to the bottom yet. Since I fed those balls of ground bait, my bait hasn't got to the bottom. If it gets to the bottom, then I think I'll catch a bigger fish. But if it doesn't, then I might just slip a pellet on. Hopefully then it'll be a little bit more of a waiting game, but we may well catch a bigger fish. Because a pellet definitely wouldn't get interfered with by those smaller fish. Just waiting to see if that'll... Really is a lot of fish there, a pile of fish. All action. As soon as that drops in, just a few seconds and the float's going. Right, settled down again. I think it might have got on the bottom this time. No, there it goes. Can you see the float moving away? Just whizzing away with a little fish. But just exactly what happens when you first start to fish. Let's put one of these. I've got some. Oh, that is tiny, that one. That really is. It's not even 1 ounce. Let's put one of these. I've got some Vandenine gellets. They're 6mm halibut gellets, which I can. And I've put some pellets in. Whether there's any big fish there at the moment to take this, with a bit of luck, at least I should get a rest. I've not even had a chance. So every time I've gone out, the float's gone under. So I've not had any chance. Let's try just dropping this halibut gellet. Now I know that's going to get to the bottom, and if I get a bite, it's going to be a biggish fish. Oh, I've got a sign anyway. Oh, I couldn't believe that I got a bite that quick. So there's some big fish down there. But it just shows you what can happen, how you can start off. Let's have a look at my rig. I'm fishing with a size 14 carp maggot hook. It's a fairly fine wire, but a good size hook, so I can put pellet, 3 maggots, 2 maggots. But it's not a real heavy gauge hook. Looking for, I think the biggest fish we're going to catch is probably tench, and so we don't need nothing too strong. The line is 0.14. It's Fox Micro Plus And it's, even though it's 0.14 millimetre, that's a high-tech line, so it's pre-stretched. Whenever you're fishing with a pole and using elastic like I am, always use a high-tech pre-stretched line. It's just much, much thinner in diameter for its strength, so you get a much more free fall, nice easy fall of the bait through the water. So pre-stretched line, it's really strong. I've tied this hook direct to this rig. It's fairly shallow, so the hook, so I've got no hook length. About 6 inches above the hook, I've got a number 9 stop, fishing fairly positive. I can bring that, because I'm not using a hook length at all, I can bring that right down close to the hook if I'm getting lots of bites. And then a little bunch here of 5 number 9 stots. There's just a little block of shot. Let me try and, I'll pull them apart for you so you can see there. They're so neat, I love to use them. They're lead, they go on the line very easily, but they're really neat, and always the line is dead centre on the shot. But I've pulled them together so it's a bit of a bulk. Down to the float itself, it's 8 number 10 shots, so it's probably about half a gram, or getting on for half a gram. This is a Fox MP2. It's got a carbon stem, a nylon bristle, a reasonable size nylon bristle so that you can see it. And I've put a small sleeve, don't know if you can see that sleeve, you probably can just now, a small sleeve over the top just to help protect the eye. On these balsa floats, if you get a really big fish, the eye can pull out quite easily. And then from the float tip to the connector, there's probably about another 12 inches, just a bit more than 12 inches there. I've just got an overhand loop to secure it to the connector there. The elastic is, it's about a number 6. It's a Fox, it's the lightest one they do. Fox, and it's a hollow elastic. Really stretches, but I find hollow is good for small and large fish in the lighter sizes. So it will handle a tench, be nice for bream, and yet I won't sort of lose any of the roach and rudd that I'm catching. Let's just go, I think I'll go out and try, maybe it's settled down. I'm going to have a little go with maggot. If that doesn't work, I'm going to put a pellet on, see if I can catch a bigger fish. They probably, it's been so soon since they don't hardly see pellets in here, so the fish have to take a little bit of time to wean them onto the bait. But they will come round and gradually start to feed on pellets, and then eventually pellet will be the best bait to use, because it'll mean just mainly bigger fish. The hardest bit is to get the bait through the fish, through those surface fish. We know there should be plenty of feed down there for the fish. Just waiting for that bait to settle. Right over the feed area. And straight away it's gone. Just buried, didn't it? Reasonable fish. Probably are just settling a little bit now. Just caught a flash of it, looks like a goodish roach. Just be able to swing it, it's a big fish though. Oh, lovely. Just see the maggot coming out of the fish's mouth there. So they should be settling down a little bit now. Just when I've got deeply hooked fish, I use this Slamo disgorger. It's just brilliant for, if it's just inside the mouth, it's brilliant for unhooking the fish. But that one went straight back, so it's okay. Well, I think I'll try maggot again. Always, you never know what baits to use. You know, when you start a fishing session, it's never ever the same. Some days the fish will take one bait, some days another, and that's what you have to work out. And also work out how much to feed them. Main thing, you must be able to read what the float's doing. It's like a mini hurricane again now, wind and rain and dropping that. Oh. It's good for fishing, but it's not always so good for filming when it's like this. I can see the bait okay though, it just shot straight away that time. Still waiting for those fish to settle down a bit really, to get down near the bottom before they feed, but they won't, they're there, it's just solid with fish. This is the beauty of pole fishing, you can be so precise with everything that you're doing. Oh, those lovely roach. Not so big this time. Just about 2 or 3 ounces. Perfect condition. Hook through the lip. Just nice for unhooking. I'm using a barbless hook, so it's much better for the fish. Easy to unhook. I'm going to try one of these halibut pellets. These are 6mm Vandenine halibut pellets, and I've hooked it through the flat end and then just teasing it round so it's sort of buried. The hook is half buried in the pellet. Probably have to wait a little bit longer for a bite, but it could well be a bigger fish if they're onto pellet yet. I mean, you could put double maggot on and keep catching all day long, and the fish would get bigger. Just a matter of feeding enough. Almost had a bite on that straight away. I didn't hit it because I thought it was a little fish, but something took that straight away. Just sort of buried as it went in. It might have been a line bite. If there's big fish in your peg, you can sometimes, where they touch the line, it looks like a bite, but it's not. That's a bite. That was a bite then, but look at that. I flicked out of it because I was so disgusted. It was quite a small fish, that. On pellet. Let's try that again. I couldn't believe that I got a bite, hooked it on pellet, and it was only probably like the roach I just caught. Which means that the big fish haven't moved in yet. I'm sure they will. Well, I know they will, they always do. It's just normal fishing. When you start, you catch the smaller fish, and then the bigger fish move in and bully them out. But it's a bite every cast. You see that last little shot take up in a minute? There. Oh, it's another. And something else had a go at it then, just on the drop. So there's lots of fish activity there, but probably small ones. Because if it's a big fish, they usually hook themselves. Yeah, it's just a small fish again. It's amazing that how these small fish are taking those pellets are 6mm. They're big pellets. And it's not a bad roach, but it's not the big fish that you'd expect to catch. But they're straight onto those pellets. Yeah, beautiful condition, but not perfect. Just a matter of time, I think. I might have to feed again. Sometimes you have to feed a bit more if there's that many fish there taking the bait. And that's another secret that you need to know, is when to feed again. That's always hard. And it's usually you need to feed when you start to catch, when you're catching a lot smaller fish. It usually means all your bait's gone. So the big fish clear off. But I think at the moment, I don't think anything's settled yet. Just in again. Plenty of signs around the float. That's that last shot taken up. Can you see how the float's just above the water? It's got a nice orange bristle that picks up the light, so it shows easily. When you're fishing a pellet, don't be too eager to strike. It's not quite the same as maggot. With maggot, you want to be onto the fish straight away. With pellet, you just give them a little bit more time. I think the fish has lifted that. Look, the float's come out of the water. Usually if it's a lift bite, quite often it's a bream. At least I've got a chance to watch the float for a little while. Before it just going in and away, and now I know that the big bait is on the bottom. I was worried I'd lost the bait then, so I had to have a look at it just in case it had gone, but it hadn't. It was. I thought it would still be there because I didn't see any real bite. There's another bite on the drop then. On the drop on pellet. Keep that rod tip down as you come back. Let the elastic sort of do its job. It's just a cushion. But even with these small fish, because I'm on that lovely soft elastic, you don't lose any fish. There. Just another perfect condition roach. They're all flicking off today. Yeah, beautiful. Don't really like that sunlight, I don't think. Great fishing. Slightly bigger fish, just taking time for the really big fish to move in. I think there's just so many smaller fish in the peg. Oh, it's another one of those lovely big rudd. Beautiful, these are beautiful fish. Just don't very often see them. Lovely colours, almost gold and look at that fish. That's fantastic, that. Really, really red fins. Beautiful, perfect mouth. Just took the bait right down. More than half a pound, that one, so. Now, one of the important things when you're fishing is that you come to a lake and you don't know, you look at it, how deep is it? You must plumb the depth, that is, find out how deep it is. We're fishing on the bottom, so I did this before I started. You need to know how deep is it. You need to know what to set your float at. So you need a plummet, which is a small weight that goes on your hook. This one's just a cork in the bottom for your hook to go into, and then the line threads through it. So that's a weight that's heavier, much heavier than the rest of my rig. So that's to ascertain the depth. And then if you just take it out where you want to fish, I'll talk a little bit about deciding. So you take it out. Now when you get to where you think, right, I'm going to fish there, make sure that you just lower that plummet very slowly through the water, slowly. In other words, so it's directly under the float. If you do it quickly, it can be away from the float. So it's very slowly down there. Just hit the bottom, bang, there. So I've set it sort of maybe 3 or 4 inches over depth, that's all. And you can work round and sort of see, is it deeper that way? You can look at the contours of your swim just by using the plummet. Is it getting shallower? No, that's similar. You can move it round everywhere. I know this swim, as you come in quicker, as you come in closer, it just gets deeper. There's like a deeper, see there, look, where it's gone, there's a deeper channel there, and then it goes up onto a sort of plateau. It's only because I fish it a lot that I know, but you can search around and you may think, oh, I want to fish in that deeper water there in the channel, or I may want to fish on that shallow part. So with the plummet, you can search the contours of your peg and see exactly what's happening. So I'm fishing on that slightly shallower water. It's something like about 10 metres out. And waiting really for those big fish to come in. But you must find your depth. And usually it's best to start on or near the bottom and then maybe work up later, unless you're fishing in a real deep water. Say you're fishing somewhere that's sort of 20 or 30 foot deep in the summer, then usually the fish are up near the surface anyway. But this being only something like probably 4 or 5 foot, just over 4.5 foot deep, I should think, maybe 5 foot, that the fish will be, as many a fish will be on the bottom as there is up in the water. It's just down to how I feed. And when you're fishing with a maggot or pellet, you have to strike into the fish. You have to sort of get the hook to go through the bait that you've got on the hook and into the fish's mouth. So you have to give a little short, usually a short, sharp, there's a fish taking it on the drop there, but just usually a short, sharp upward movement. I'm trying to leave it. A little fish got hold of it on the drop, it's left it now. It still had hold of it, but a little short, sharp, like a bang, to get the hook to go into the fish. Little fish, they're not so easy to hook because when you strike, there's not as much resistance in weight with the fish. Smaller fish move easily, so it's harder for the hook to penetrate on smaller fish than it is on big fish. Big fish, usually very vicious on the bites and surge away, can almost hook themselves. I'm going to have one more go with this maggot and then go back onto pellet and try to catch a big fish on the bottom. Keeping that rig down in the water, and I felt the fish take it as the bait dropped through the water then. Probably would have only been a small fish. I'm hoping now that all the big fish are down near the bottom. Just as that ground bait that we put in and the maggots have settled. Slightly bigger fish again, but it just settled. And once you strike, try to pull the fish immediately away from the feed area. So I sort of strike and then pull the fish away from that feed area. It's a nice roach. Just flicked off the hook then. Just pulled that fish away from, let's try and catch another one to show you how to do it. So you strike and then you don't really want the fish fighting right where you're catching them, because they'll scare especially when you're catching bream, they scare each other. So you want to hook the fish and then draw it out of the swim. When you hook a fish, it will sort of be flashing and not swimming as it normally does, so it can easily scare the rest of the fish that are feeding on your bait. Just thought I'd have a go up in the water because I know there's some big fish there, and straight away, first cast I've hooked into probably a big rudd. What I've done is there's so many ropes there, I thought, right, I've used a 6mm banded pellet, so a big hard pellet to try and deter the smaller fish. Yeah, another one of those lovely big rudd. I won't lift this one, it's too big to lift. Oh, that's a lovely fish. right up in the water. I put a shallow rig on, and there, can you see the pellet and the band still coming out of the fish's mouth? I can just unhook that and use that again just as it is, but lovely, £1/2 rudd up in the water, just flicking a few pellets in. So this is surface fishing. And what I've done is, let's talk a little bit about the rig. We've got an 8mm, a 6mm fish meal pellet, plus the band, and the hook is a size 20. It's a special carp match from Fox, a strong hook. It's a 20, but it's much bigger. If you look at it, much bigger than the 20. I've tied this direct to 0.14 line, a 4.5 line, same as I was using on the other rig. And I've got a bunch of shot right in the middle here, 5 number 10 shot, all bunched together. If you look at where I've put that, it's about midway, so that when I drop it in, the shot will drop in, but the pellet will drop from top to bottom slowly. Then hook itself, the float is 1/4 gram, let me just pull that round, just 1/4 gram. Fox, it's got a big thick bristle on there because it's got to support a pellet, a big heavy pellet. So you can't use a little tiny slim bristle. You have to have a fairly thick bristle. Short, the float is short. When you're fishing near the surface, you want a short float just to stop tangles because you're lifting and dropping all the time. Carbon stem, I've put 3 pieces of silicone there and a small piece of silicone over the bristle just for extra strength. The distance from the float tip to the connector there is probably about 16 or 17 inches. And I've got a solid elastic for surface fishing, this is a number 6 Fox solid elastic on a small connector, nice and smooth, just right for those big fish. So it's a pretty simple rig, and I'm using a banded pellet at the moment and not maggot because there's so many small fish there. So it's a good tip. If you're getting bitted out with small fish, just use one of those pellet bands, because it's a job for the fish then to take the bait from the hook. You get so many bites when you're up in the water. If you can get away, if you can get the bites using a tough bait, I'm still fishing over where I cupped all that bait in, so still lots of fish there, and bites straight away. I'm almost striking with my knee. If you look, I've put the pellets in the pouch, and then when you're feeding with a catapult, I trap my arm, my right arm and the pole, just keep it trapped in my arm so it leaves my right hand free and my left hand to feed. And you just push the catapult forward rather than pulling the pouch back and then release the pellets around the float. Give a couple of pouchfuls in there because I've been chatting away. There's a little bite then. But normally you would feed and then you lift it and you can drop it right back where you've fed. And that's when the fish should take it like that, just as you take it. You imagine it taking those loose offerings and the fish whiz in, take it straight away. Surface fishing is great on a pole. Just keep the bait going in all the time. Be as quick as you can. Oh, it's a roach taking that big pellet. Lovely fish, just about swing that. Beautiful fish. And everything's still there. So quick, you can just unhook, pellet still on, fish in the net, carefully in the net. With that bulk shot, it just stops tangles. Just make sure when you're shipping out, keep that in the water, keep that nice and low. Drop it in the same spot. I'm loose feeding over that area, and I think I'll probably have a go later on for some bigger fish on the bottom. Over this pellet area, there's a little bite. It doesn't matter if you miss an odd bite because the pellet's still on the hook. That's the good thing about this style of fishing. You can see fish, as I fed those pellets, I could see fish swirling on the top. There'll be rudd, I should think. Just keep lifting and dropping it, feeding, And look for the bite when it first goes in. That's when they take it, just as it's going on through on the drop. Just look for the bite then, like that. Oh, that one took it. But the bait and everything is still perfect, so I just flick it back out again. Just flick it back out. The smaller fish won't hook themselves, but the big ones will. Just keep these pellets flicking in that area. The noise of the pellets, I can see the fish coming up more and more now, and I've only really just started feeding. The noise of those pellets hitting the water. The fish just whiz away with it. They don't hook every time, because what they do is they can feel there's something wrong as soon as they hit it. It's just a matter of how hard they take the bait, how much they want the bait. It bites all the time, so that means there's lots of fish there. Great to see it. Just a few pellets in. Think about how long those pellets are taking to land, and then just drop your one in and look for the bite then. Just straight away, as soon as it went in. I could see some fish flashing even. Just as I went in, I fired the pellets and I could see Rudd flashing near the surface as they were taking the bait. This will help. This will probably bring some bigger fish into the peg below anyway. Just the noise and the activity of the fish won't hurt. Really going mad now. But fish are always, they're never that easy to catch. There's another big fish there, right on the surface. Just dropped that pellet in where I'd been feeding. And the fish come swirling in for it. Oh, I don't know what this is. It's just a slightly better fish, I think. Sometimes when I have a fish on, I keep feeding. Just try and keep the other fish in the area. So, hey, I don't know what this is, probably a big rudd, I think, this one. Just nice to catch these fish. As they're swirling about, they're grabbing at the bait, they can't really see anything. Really do fight well. God, incredible, some of these. Oh, it's a big roach. Whew. Nice big roach, but as it was flashing about in the water, that's what happens as they're flashing about. They're grabbing at everything. They don't really see that hook. Perfect condition. And the bait's still on. I wonder how many fish we can catch on that same bait. That's the ideal thing about these pellet bands and hard pellets. It's a job for the fish to knock them off. So when you're somewhere in a situation where you're getting lots of bites from small fish and you have to keep baiting up, then think about the banded pellet. Just a little secret from Bob Nudd about the banded pellet. How you can overcome the small fish and start catching. Usually you only catch big fish. The bigger the pellet, then the bigger the fish. So we're on 6mm pellets. You can see how that float is holding up that big pellet. Oh, buried again then. This is a really all-action way of fishing. They feel it immediately, so you've got to be, it just bites all the time, but the fish reject the hook pretty quickly. They feel that hook. Because it's on a band and it's sort of outside of the pellet, the fish are aware of that. But it doesn't matter, you just keep lifting, feeding. You don't have to bait up, you just keep lifting it, striking, keep striking, just dropping it back in again. I can strike with my knee sometimes. Just strike back. It's really swirling now, the fish. As you get the feed going in, I felt the pole jerk on that one. You catch, you come back, you miss some bites, but you come back with a fish every time. Sometimes you lose them. That's fantastic, all action fishing. Now, I mentioned that I'd use an overhand loop to connect the rig to the connector. Just want to show you exactly, because a lot of people don't know how to tie it. Let me just demonstrate something. Take a spool of line. Now, most people think that an overhand loop is that they take it round their fingers. Let me show you. Take it round their fingers like that and pull it through once and pull it through twice, and they think, oh, because I've pulled it through twice, that's brilliant. And they pull it round and then wet it a bit. Now that's how most people do an overhand loop. Well, that in fact is a double granny knot, and that is useless. If I test that knot, if I put that line there and just do a test on that knot, you'll find it just breaks as easy as anything. That's 4-pound line and it's snapped like cotton. And most fishermen think, God, I lost a big one there, so and so, it broke me. But normally it's down to bad knots. An overhand loop, and this is how you should tie when you're doing your connectors to your kits, or else if you're doing loop to loop from hook length to your main line. You take your line. Once again, you fold it over almost the same as you did with that double granny knot. But if you look at it, take this piece at the top here and bring it back round and through here. So you bring it away, you take it away from you, you bring it back round and you tuck it through. Now, if you look at it then, you get that figure of 8. Can you see that? It looks like a number 8. That's what you get, that's what you want. Wet the line. Just pull it. It looks the same. If you looked at it, you'd think it was the same knot. But when you test it, you can't. In the end it goes, but it's 4 pound, but you can hardly break it. It went on about 4 pounds. The other snapped like cotton. So make sure, and this is high-tech line, so the knot strength is never as good as with normal mono line. Next time, make sure you tie that figure of 8 overhand loop, and then you won't get any problems, no break. It's just so rare that I ever get broken or snapped up. Normally, when you've got line like that on, you can probably land a 10, 12, 14 pound carp. I think now I'm going to go out on the bottom. We've had loads of action up in the water, it's non-stop. I'm going to go out on the bottom with a pellet on this bottom rig and sit and wait and try and end the programme on a bigger fish. Let's look. I've been fishing not for too long, so that with fishing it takes time for fish to come round. When you feed, they don't come round, big fish don't come round automatically. The fish like tench and that, they'll probably be feeding later tonight. So let's just bury that fish meal pellet. So we've got a biggish bait on. Either that or a piece of sweet corn, I think, to catch a bigger fish. Maybe that little bit of loose feeding that I did has drawn a few small fish into the area, or a few bigger fish as well into the area. Maybe it's brought the little fish up in the water. Don't really want to see a bite immediately. It wants to go in and stay there for a little while. Bigger fish always take longer to find a bait. Usually because there's not as many big fish in your peg as there is small fish. So a big fish has got to be feeding there and find your bait before the little fish do. At least she's got to the bottom now. I was fishing down on the bottom and loose feeding them. I could see, as I was feeding, I could see loads of signs of fish up near the surface. I thought, I'm going to have another go up in the water with that banded pellet, and that's what I did. Put a banded pellet on and I'm into a nice fish. Don't know what it is. It's a biggish fish. And I think this will be a great one to finish the programme on. If you think about it, it's been about all my secrets on stillwater pole fishing. Just little tips and hints and things that you can do to help you catch. Cupping in potfuls of feed. Looks, just caught a glimpse of it, looks like a really big roach. Lovely fish. Look at that, right up in the water. They're not on the bottom at all today. Must be this weather because it's a very changeable, sometimes rain, sometimes not, but that's a terrific fish to finish up on that banded pellet up in the water. So 2 methods: on the bottom, up in the water, fishing with a pole in a nice tight area using the right elastics. And there, look at that. Beautiful roach. Probably about 12 ounces. Still got the banded pellet and the band. I can go out and catch another fish if I want to, but I think that's enough for one day. It's just started to rain again. Fantastic fishing.